First contact. The stars hung like silent witnesses in the void as the Cradari warships glided through space, their obsidian hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. 12 behemoths, each bristling with weapons that had laid waste to countless civilizations. At the head of the formation, the dreadnought subjugator cast a shadow that seemed to darken the very fabric of spacetime. On the bridge of the subjugator, Supreme Commander Vrax surveyed the tactical display with cold satisfaction. His scaled hide gleamed under the dim lighting. The bony ridges along his skull, marked with the ceremonial etchings that denoted his many victories. Status report, Vrax demanded, his voice a harsh rasp that sent junior officers scurrying to their stations. The Lumari defense grid is active, Supreme Commander reported his second-in-command. Their planetary shields are at maximum capacity, but our calculations show they will fail within 3 standard cycles of sustained bombardment. Vrax's lipless mouth twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. Another world for the glory of the Cradari Empire. Begin the approach pattern. The Lumari had been aware of the Cradari threat for years, watching with growing dread as neighboring systems fell one by one to the relentless expansion of the Empire. They were a peaceful species, their blue-green skin and large, expressive eyes reflecting the calm waters that covered most of their homeworld, Lumaris Prime. Their civilization had flourished around vast floating cities, their technology focused on sustainability and harmony rather than warfare. In the central science spire of the capital city, Aqualith, Chief Researcher Thilla stared at her monitoring equipment with growing anxiety. The holographic display showed the approaching Cradari fleet with merciless precision. Time to arrival. 6 hours. Any response to our distress calls? She asked her assistant, Moro, though she already knew the answer. The younger Lumari shook his head, the bioluminescent spots along his temples dimming with his mood. None, Chief Researcher. The neighboring systems are either already under Cradari control or too afraid to intervene. Thilla closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. Then we stand alone. There is one strange reading, Moro said hesitantly. It began 3 days ago. A signal from an uncharted region, using frequencies we've never encountered before. Thila's eyes snapped open. Show me. The display shifted to reveal a complex waveform, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost musical. It doesn't match any known communication protocol in our database, Moro explained. Is it a response to our distress call? Impossible to say. It appeared shortly after we began broadcasting, but it's not directed specifically at us. It's more like, Moro searched for the words, like someone noticed our call and started heading in our direction while trying to establish contact. Thela felt a faint stirring of hope, quickly suppressed. Keep monitoring it. Meanwhile, prepare the evacuation protocols for the research archives. If Lumaris falls, our knowledge must survive. High above, the Planetary Defense Council gathered in emergency session. Elder Sovan, his skin faded to pale turquoise with age, addressed the grim-faced assembly. The evacuation of critical personnel and children is proceeding as planned, he reported. 30% of designated civilians have been relocated to the deep-sea sanctuaries. However, our defenses cannot withstand a prolonged assault from a fleet of this size. What of the diplomatic approach? Asked Counselor Lyron, though her tone suggested she already knew the futility of the question. The Cradari do not negotiate, Elder Sovan replied. They conquer. They extract. They move on. This has been their pattern across 17 known systems. The council chamber fell silent, each member contemplating the likely end of their 5,000-year civilization. The silence was broken by an urgent communication. Elder Sovan, came a voice. We have multiple hyperspace signatures approaching from the uncharted vector. The main display activated, showing a new set of vessels emerging from folded space. But these weren't Cradari reinforcements. The design was entirely unfamiliar, sleek and silver, with smooth curved lines unlike the angular Cradari ships or the organic shapes of Lumari vessels. One ship, murmured Elder Soven. Just one. Indeed, a single vessel had appeared, small compared to the Credari dreadnoughts but moving with remarkable speed and precision. The council watched in stunned silence as the unknown ship accelerated directly toward the Credari formation. "Are they insane?" whispered Counselor Lyron. "They'll be destroyed instantly." Aboard the United Earth ship Defiant, Captain Sarah Chen observed the tactical display with calculated calm. At 42, she was relatively young for her command, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, eyes sharp as she assessed the situation. 12 hostile vessels, heavily armed, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from Tactical. Configuration matches the records we received from the Arcturus traders about the Credari Empire. Chen nodded. "And the planet?" "Life signs consistent with the distress call," responded Science Officer Dr. Ilara Voss, her fingers dancing over the sensor controls. "Population approximately 3 billion, concentrated in floating structures over the oceans. Planetary defense system active, but likely insufficient against that fleet." "This is what we came for, people," Chen said, her voice steady. "First contact protocol with the Lumari is our priority, but first we need to make sure they'll be around to talk to. Lieutenant Park, open a channel to the Lid Credari vessel." "Channel open, Captain." Chen stood, straightening her uniform. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiant, representing the Solar Alliance. You are engaging in hostile actions against a peaceful civilization. We request that you withdraw your forces immediately." The response was almost immediate. A harsh, guttural voice translated through the ship's eye. "Unidentified vessel, this is Supreme Commander Vrax of the Credari Empire. You have entered Imperial space. Withdraw or be destroyed." Chen's expression hardened. "This is neutral space, Commander. The Lumari world is not your territory. All space is Credari territory by right of conquest," came the reply. "You have been warned." The communication cut off abruptly. "They're powering weapons," reported Jackson. "Shields to maximum," ordered Chen. "Evasive pattern Delta. Let's show them what the Defiant can do." The first volley from the Credari ships lit up space with destructive energy. Plasma torpedoes and beam weapons designed to overwhelm defensive systems through sheer firepower. But the Defiant moved with uncanny agility for a vessel its size, the adaptive shields absorbing and dispersing the energy in cascading patterns of light. Phase cannons locked on their lead escort, Jackson announced. "Fire," Chen commanded. The Defiant's weapons lashed out, precision strikes that targeted propulsion and weapon systems rather than attempting to destroy the larger vessels outright. 2 Credari ships veered off course, their engines disabled. On the Lumari homeworld, the population watched in disbelief as the lone ship danced through the Credari formation, evading the worst of their attacks while landing precise counterstrikes. In her laboratory, Thella stared at the display. "Who are they?" she whispered. "How can one ship stand against 12? The battle continued for 20 minutes, an eternity in space combat. The Defiant suffered damage, with shields down to 30% and hull breaches on 2 decks, but they had disabled the weapons on 3 Credari vessels and completely neutralized 2 smaller ones. On the subjugator's bridge, Vrax seethed with rage. "Impossible. Concentrate all fire on that ship." But the coordinated attack never came. The Defiant launched a spread of quantum missiles, not at the ships, but at the empty space between them. The detonations created localized distortions in spacetime, temporarily disrupting the Credari formation and their targeting systems. "Tactical retreat," Chen ordered. "Put us between their fleet and the planet." The Defiant pulled back, taking position as a shield between the Credari and Lumaris Prime. Damage control teams worked frantically to restore shields and repair critical systems. "Open a channel to the planet," Chen said. Moments later, the view screen showed the astonished face of Elder Soven and the Lumari Defense Council. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiant. We received your distress call and have come to offer assistance." Elder Sovan seemed at a loss for words before finally responding. "We are grateful, Captain Chen. But I fear your single ship, impressive as it is, cannot stand against the entire Credari fleet." Chen smiled slightly. "Perhaps not indefinitely, but we can buy you time. And sometimes, Elder, time is the most valuable resource. We request permission to send a delegation to your council to discuss our options." "Granted, of course," Elder Sovan replied. "We will transmit coordinates for your shuttle." As the communication ended, Chen turned to her first officer. "Commander Rivera, prepare a diplomatic team. And contact Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact with both the Lumari and the Credari Empire, though I suspect only one of those relationships has a future." In the void of space, the Defiant maintained its protective position, its hull bearing the scars of battle, but its presence sending a clear message. The Lumari were no longer alone. The Credari fleet had pulled back to regroup, surprised by the unexpected resistance from a species they had never encountered before. And aboard the subjugator, Supreme Commander Vrax summoned his war council. The easy conquest he had anticipated had suddenly become complicated. For the first time in his long and brutal career, he faced an unknown variable, humanity. "Find out everything about these humans," he commanded. "Where they come from, their strengths, their weaknesses." His clawed hand tightened around the arm of his command chair. "No single ship defies the Credari Empire and survives." The Alliance. The shuttle from the Defiant descended through Lumerus Prime's atmosphere, passing through layers of iridescent clouds that shimmered with bioluminescent microorganisms. Captain Chen watched through the viewport as the vast floating cities came into view, organic structures that seemed to grow from the ocean itself, connected by graceful bridges that spanned kilometers across the azure waters. "Remarkable architecture," murmured Dr. Voss beside her. Their entire civilization adapted to life above the ocean, rather than reshaping their environment to suit themselves. "Different approach than what we took on Earth," Chen agreed. "Let's hope we have more in common than just our differences." The shuttle docked at a specialized platform that the Lumari had hastily adapted for the unfamiliar craft. A delegation waited, led by Elder Sovan and Chief Researcher Thela. The humans were struck by the natural elegance of the Lumari. Tall, slender beings with blue-green skin that displayed subtle patterns of bioluminescence reflecting their emotional states. "Welcome to Lumerus Prime," Elder Sovan said, touching his forehead in the traditional Lumari greeting. "Your intervention was unexpected, but most welcome." Captain Chen smiled, mimicking the gesture. "The Solar Alliance makes it a policy to respond to distress calls, Elder Sovan. Though I admit, we didn't expect to find ourselves in the middle of an invasion." The delegation moved to a grand chamber with a panoramic view of the endless ocean, where translucent creatures with gossamer wings flew above the surface, catching the light of the setting sun. "You took an enormous risk confronting the Credari fleet," said Thela, her scientist's curiosity evident. "How did your single vessel manage to withstand their combined firepower?" Chen nodded to her chief engineer, Commander Hiroshi Tanaka, who stepped forward with a holographic projector. It displayed the Defiant's schematics. "Adaptive shielding," Tanaka explained. "Our shields learn from each attack, reconfiguring to most effectively counter specific energy signatures. The more they fire at us, the better we get at defending against those particular weapons." The Lumari Council members exchanged glances of surprise and admiration. "And your weapons systems targeted their propulsion and weapons specifically," noted a Lumari military advisor. "Not center mass as is standard Credari doctrine. We prefer disabling to destroying when possible," Chen replied. "Though make no mistake, we're prepared to do whatever's necessary to protect ourselves and our allies." Elder Sovan leaned forward. "You consider us allies already, Captain. You know very little about us." "We know you sent a distress call when faced with annihilation," Chen said simply. "And we know the Credari's reputation from trading partners we've encountered. Sometimes the choice of allies isn't difficult. The meeting continued for hours as the humans and Lumari exchanged information about their respective civilizations. The Lumari were fascinated by humanity's rapid technological advancement and their expansion through their own solar system before discovering FTL travel just 15 years prior. The humans, in turn, were impressed by the Lumari's sustainable technology and their centuries of peaceful cooperation among their own diverse populations. "The Credari will return," Thila finally said, bringing the discussion back to the immediate threat. "They never abandon a conquest once targeted. They will bring reinforcements. We're counting on it," Shen replied with a confidence that surprised the Lumari. "My ship is transmitting our situation to Earth Command. But even without reinforcements, we're not as outmatched as they believe." Before she could elaborate, an urgent message came through. "Captain," came Commander Rivera's voice from the Defiant. "The Credari fleet is on the move, and they've been joined by 3 additional heavy cruisers." Chen stood immediately. "I need to return to my ship. Elder Sovan, we've uploaded tactical data to your defense grid. It should help coordinate with our efforts. Thila, if you're willing, I'd like you to join us aboard the Defiant as a liaison." Thila's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with surprise and determination. "I would be honored, Captain." As they rushed back to the shuttle, Thila asked the question that had been building throughout their discussions. "Captain, forgive my directness, but why are you doing this? Your people have no connection to ours. The risk you're taking." Chen paused at the shuttle's entrance. 20 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself in a global conflict. We came to the brink of extinction before we finally understood that our differences were less important than our shared humanity. When we looked to the stars, we promised ourselves we wouldn't let others suffer if we could prevent it. She smiled grimly. Besides, the Credari would eventually find Earth too. Better to face them here, with allies, than alone later. Aboard the Defiant, the atmosphere was tense but focused as the crew prepared for the coming battle. Thela watched in fascination as humans moved with practiced efficiency, each understanding their role. "Credari fleet approaching, Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson. 15 vessels total, including the 3 new heavy cruisers. They've adjusted their weapon frequencies based on our previous encounter." As expected, Chen nodded. "Implement countermeasure protocol Theta." "Dr. Voss, status of the Lumari defense grid." "Online and synchronized with our targeting systems," Voss replied. "The integration is working better than anticipated thanks to Chief Researcher Thila's assistance." Thila had been working furiously with the science team, helping adapt Lumari defensive technology to work in concert with the Defiant systems. "Your technology is remarkably adaptable, Captain," she observed, "as are your people." "Adaptability is humanity's greatest strength," Chen replied. "It's helped us survive on a world of constant change and challenge." She turned to the tactical station. "Status of Operation Sparrow." "Ready on your command," Jackson confirmed. Chen opened a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, battle stations. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today." The Credari fleet approached in an attack formation designed to prevent the Defiant from using the same evasive tactics as before. Supreme Commander Vrax had studied the recordings of the previous encounter and adjusted his strategy accordingly. "The human vessel is trapped," he observed with satisfaction. "They cannot maneuver without exposing themselves to concentrated fire from multiple vectors." "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the Lumari defense platforms." Vrax dismissed the concern. "The Lumari defenses are insignificant. Focus all attention on the human ship." That was his first mistake. As the Credari fleet moved into attack range, the Lumari orbital platforms suddenly powered up to levels they had never before demonstrated, firing precisely targeted beams that struck 4 Credari vessels simultaneously. The beams themselves did minimal damage, but they weren't meant to destroy. "Now," ordered Chen. The Defiant launched what appeared to be a swarm of small drones, hundreds of them, spreading out across the battlefield at incredible speed. "What are these?" demanded Vrax as the tactical display became clouded with targets. The answer came moments later as the drones attached themselves to the Crederi ships that had been illuminated by the Lumari targeting beams. Once attached, they began broadcasting on the exact frequency of the Crederi ships' identification signals. "They're confusing our targeting systems," the tactical officer reported with growing alarm. "Our ships are registering each other as potential targets." The Defiant executed a daring maneuver, accelerating directly toward the subjugator, while the Crederi fleet hesitated, unable to fire for fear of hitting their own vessels. "Target their command and control systems," Chen ordered. "Fire phase cannons, maximum yield." The Defiant's weapons struck the subjugator's bridge tower with surgical precision. At the same moment, the ship launched a second wave of devices. These were not drones, but specialized EMP weapons designed to temporarily disable Credari systems based on the data they had gathered during the first engagement. 3 Credari ships went dark immediately, their power systems overloaded by the targeted electromagnetic pulse. 2 more, attempting to evade, collided with each other, causing catastrophic damage to both. On the bridge of the subjugator, systems failed in cascading sequence. Vrax roared in frustrated rage as his magnificent dreadnought, pride of the Crederi fleet, began to drift powerless. "Emergency power to weapons," he commanded. "Destroy that human ship at all costs." The subjugator managed to fire one last desperate salvo, a spread of plasma torpedoes that caught the Defiant as it executed another evasive maneuver. The impact rocked the human vessel, causing significant damage to its port nacelle and lateral shields. "Hull breach on decks 5 through 7, reported Rivera, steadying himself against his console. "Emergency force fields holding." Casualties reported in engineering. Chen's expression remained determined. "Maintain position. Target their remaining weapons arrays." The battle continued for another 30 minutes, a chaotic dance of technology and tactics. The Defiant suffered serious damage, with systems failing across the ship, but the Crederi fleet fared far worse. 5 ships destroyed, 7 disabled, and the remainder, including the powerless subjugator, unable to mount an effective offense. And then something unprecedented occurred. From the surface of 3 nearby moons, hidden vessels suddenly emerged. Ships belonging to species that had apparently been hiding from Crederi detection. They moved to join the Defiant, forming a protective screen around the damaged human vessel. "We're being hailed by the lead ship," reported Lieutenant Park with surprise. The view screen activated to show a reptilian being with crystalline scales. "I am Captain Zurax of the Velaran Resistance. We have observed your battle with great interest, humans. For too long, we have hidden from the Credari, watching as they conquered world after world. Your courage has inspired us to finally take action." Similar messages came from the other vessels, representatives of species that had survived Crederi expansion by concealing themselves, establishing hidden colonies, biding their time. The human stand against overwhelming odds had given them the one thing they had lost: hope. With the arrival of these unexpected allies, the remaining functional Crederi vessels began to retreat. On the bridge of the subjugator, now operating on minimal emergency power, Supreme Commander Vrax faced the unthinkable defeat. "Send the emergency recall to all Imperial forces in this sector," he ordered, his voice hollow. "The Crederi Empire does not recognize defeat, only strategic reassessment." As the Crederi fleet limped away from Lumerus Prime, the damaged Defiant maintained orbit, its crew working around the clock to effect repairs. In the ship's conference room, Captain Chen met with representatives from the Lumari and the newly revealed resistant species. "This is only the beginning," she cautioned them. "The Credari will return, likely with an even larger force." "But we will be ready," replied Elder Sovin. "And we will not stand alone." Captain Zurax nodded his crystalline head. "For generations, we have hidden, each species fighting its own losing battle against the Credari. Today has shown us that together, And with humanity's help, we can resist. Thela, who had proven invaluable during the battle by helping integrate Lumeri technology with human systems, looked at Chen with newfound respect. "You said adaptability was humanity's greatest strength, Captain. I believe there is another. Your ability to inspire others to find strength they didn't know they possessed." Chen smiled tiredly, the weight of command and the losses her crew had suffered evident in her eyes. "That goes both ways. Thela, sometimes we need to be reminded what we're fighting for." 3 days later, as repairs continued and plans were made for a more permanent alliance against the Cradari threat, sensors detected multiple signatures emerging from hyperspace. Chen rushed to the bridge, expecting Cradari reinforcements, but instead, 5 ships bearing the insignia of the Solar Alliance appeared. "Captain," came a familiar voice over the communications system. "Admiral Hernandez sends his compliments and apologizes for the delay. The UEA's Intrepid, Valiant, Challenger, Dauntless, and Enterprise reporting for duty. Seems like you started quite the party without us." Chen laughed for what felt like the first time in days. "Better late than never, Captain Rodriguez. And just in time. We're forming a new alliance out here, and Earth will want a seat at the table." As the human fleet took position around Lumerus Prime, representatives from 12 previously subjugated or hidden species gathered to formalize what would eventually be known as the Orion Cooperative. The Cradari Empire, which had terrorized this sector of space for centuries, now faced something they had never encountered before: unified resistance, inspired by a species they had never known existed, until a single ship answered a desperate call for help. In the Grand Council chamber on Lumerus Prime, Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled delegates. "On behalf of humanity and the Solar Alliance, I extend our hand in friendship and our pledge of mutual defense. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for all our peoples." Elder Sovin stepped forward to complete the ancient Lumari greeting ritual, touching his forehead, and then reaching out to clasp Chen's hand in a symbolic merging of traditions. "The stars themselves will remember this day, Captain Chen. The day the galaxy learned that together we are stronger than any empire." And far beyond the celebration, aboard his crippled flagship retreating to Cradari space, Supreme Commander Vrax stared at the holographic display showing the human reinforcements and the gathering alliance with cold fury. For the first time in the Empire's long history of conquest, they had not just been defeated, they had inadvertently created something far more dangerous than any single enemy. They had given the galaxy hope /